it's a joy bringer. When we get into nature and start getting our hands in the soil, some part of our soul is home and relaxes.
Hello, I'm Karen Mellers.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life. Hello, how wonderful that you have joined us again for our 4th week. Oh my goodness, it's going so quickly. Now this week and this episode, we are starting to look at a different health creation principle. We are going to focus on our next 3 episodes in the nature principle, which is obviously in the environment, mind, body, spirit, environment. And it's a huge subject. So first of all, Rosie, I think we're only just going to scratch the surface in these next 3 episodes, aren't we, really?
Well, yes, it is a huge topic. And it's a funny one. I can remember when I first created the picture of health, people saying to me, what's nature got to do with my health? That people have got their heads around healthy eating and food and sleep and reducing stress. But actually, we are part of nature. Nature is part of us. There is ultimately no separation. And our relationship with nature has a vast impact on our health.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably even 7 years ago, I would have asked that question. What has nature got to do with my health? That's that stuff over there, and I am separate to it. Oh my goodness, now looking back, thank goodness that I found you. Thank goodness that I found Walida. And now I recognize my part in this beautiful ecosystem that we are so important in, but just a small part of as well. Yeah. I really, it's hard to describe, but I now know, looking back, how different I feel. And that's the journey that I took, and that other people might start taking.
Yeah.
Listening to this podcast is the first step, is just being aware of that.
Yes.
And then the journey of reconnecting and having a relationship with everything that's all this beautiful life that is around us. What I love, Rosie, what really struck me the first time I heard you talk on this subject was you have this wonderful way of being able to join the dots and describe it in terms that somebody like me can understand. You know, you sort of can link this with this and that, and this is what it means. So I'm really, really looking forward to these next 3 episodes. And, you know, the first question is that big one, is like, what is our relationship between nature, the environment, and how well we're feeling?
Wow. Well, first of all, I mean, there's macro and there's micro, but in medicine, an environmental doctor is looking at how the air, the water, the energy around us, even the electrical energy around us, the chemicals around us, how are all of these things affecting our health? And so every single one of us, primary question, are you breathing oxygen every day? Or are you in a hermetically sealed house where everything is so energy efficient that you're rebreathing air full of carbon dioxide? How much light are you getting? You know, we photosynthesize. We're like plants. We come from the origins, the same origins as the plants. But look at the ultimate synergy. You know, we need oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Trees give out oxygen and take in carbon dioxide. So, you know, the synergy between us and nature is fundamental. And, when I ask people, my clients, where do you feel best? Where is the place you get your soul food, or you connect to source or spirit? Almost always people say to me, in the forest. You know, we were originally forest dwellers, so our soul knows that that's a deeply healthy, happy place for us. So, the light, the oxygen, but also the energy of the plants. I know it sounds very hippie-ish to talk about connecting with trees, but actually the energy that a tree gives out is profound and beautiful. And I can remember my Tai Chi teacher, Richard Farmer, when he was getting us to tune into this idea of the Chi field, he got us to go with our hands closer and closer, to start about 10 meters away, but just to walk towards a tree and see where we started to feel the field of the tree. So and we could all feel it. It wasn't just the particularly tuned in people. Every single one of us could feel where we started to feel like the warmth or that energy field.
Yeah, amazing. I think for me, one of my light bulb moments was I was gardening and I had my hands in the soil, and I noticed there were some little insects and a worm in the soil. And it just struck me, oh my goodness, I'm doing my bit. I am tending this soil. I am moving, making sure this plant has got light, has got enough space to grow. And it was in my body. I could feel it for the first time. There was a mindfulness, a consciousness about my place in that. I mean, the soil is very, very important. And, the diversity of the soil, I've heard you talk about that a lot. Share some more with us about that.
Well, so then the next obvious thing to look at is Mother Earth and farming, and the fact that unfortunately industrialized farming over the last century and before, from the 50s, 60s, when the discovery of fertilizers and the industrialization to produce more growth, more produce, but unfortunately of crops that have grown so fast that they don't have the nutrients in them. And then, of course, we get into the question of how much chemical is coming through into the food. And then in animal foods, how much growth factor is coming through. And look at the beyond pandemic of cancer. We are now looking in the UK at 1 in 2 lifetime risk. That's half of us, Karen. I mean, that's you or me. That's,
Yeah.
That's me or my partner. It's chilling.
Mhm.
And why is this happening? Because we have been forcing growth in every department. In the corporate sector, the financial sector, the farming sector, all the focus is on growth as the solution. So what do we have? An illness which is about out of control growth.
Mm.
And, one of the craziest facts I learned was that when we were farming with a horse and plough, for 1 kilojoule of energy in, we got 5 kilojoules of food energy out.
Mm.
Nowadays, apparently, to get 1 kilojoule of food energy out, we're putting 50 kilojoules in between, the tractors, the fuel, the fertilizer, the harvesting by machine, the transport to a warehouse, the packaging, the storing, the transport to a supermarket, the transport from our car back to our home, the power of our fridge. You can see how, and that's before we're talking about jet planes flying asparagus from Peru or, tomatoes from Israel. So the emphasis, of course, as we start recognizing the cost of this instant gratification, that I can have tomatoes on Christmas Day, or, asparagus in the middle of winter, we start to realize the cost of this way of living and how out of sync it is with nature.
Yeah, and I'm so glad it says on the packaging in a supermarket where something is from. And it must be 3 or 4 years now. I won't choose something that comes from a huge distance away, but it's the other side of the world, and we can get it on our shelf. And not only, that just is crazy. The maths there, it just doesn't make sense. But we have no awareness of that when we're picking something up off the shelf. It's so easy to do. And I know where I'm living right now in the Cotswolds, we have a lot of local farmers. We have a lot of in-season veg, like the asparagus at the moment that's grown around here is wonderful. It lifts my spirit to know that it's come from just down the road. I'm sure it tastes different. Do you think it does? I don't know.
Definitely. And we have to sing the praises of Patrick Holden, who first of all started the Soil Association to allow farmers to, and those who are committed to organic growing, to get organic status for their homes, for their farms. It's a big process, so it is a real commitment. It's about 3 years that the soil has to be completely free of any chemicals to be classed as organic. But he's gone on now to create something called the Sustainable Food Trust, and let's get him on as a guest, because the goal of that, his new organization, is to make every area of Britain food sustainable, food secure, in fact, I think are his words. So the idea is that your county, your region can grow enough food for the people. So around me, Somerset is food secure. Bristol is not food secure. So, we have to go a lot further to get the cities food secure. But even now, there are initiatives with people growing on the roofs of supermarkets and lovely schemes where people are, if they can't garden their own garden, they're allowing other people to come in and garden it to grow vegetables. And I was shocked myself at how relatively easy it is to grow vegetables. During COVID, our response, Mike put up 7 raised beds, and he got a whole load of manure from the farmer, and we started planting things. We had so much stuff, we couldn't eat it. And the plot is that I have is 25 meters by 25 meters. So I don't even think that's quarter of an acre. And the next thing he did was put up a polytunnel. And now we're not completely self-sufficient, but we're not far off. And sometimes there'll be 4 things on a plate that are from the garden. There might be some cabbage, some red currant jelly, some onions that I've roasted, and so on. So, it's not as hard as people think to get going with the growing side of things.
And please share some pictures on our websites and on social media of that amazing polytunnel. And we've gone down a familiar route with the nature discussion, which is about food and what we take into our bodies. We are what we eat. But let's widen the scope a little bit. Why is it important that we need to spend time in nature for our mental health? This is a growing conversation now, isn't it?
It really, really is. And I am thrilled silly that the research that's been done by Mind, the mental health charity, has shown that ecotherapy is as powerful in the treatment of depression as Prozac, or other antidepressants. So it just shows us absolutely that it's a joy bringer. When we get into nature and start getting our hands in the soil, some part of our soul is home and relaxes. And okay, if you're listening and you think, well, I've got no starting place for that, you can bring nature to you. You can grow herbs in your house. You can have a window box. Maybe you've got a balcony and you can start growing a fruit bush or something that brings the butterflies and brings nature to you. And if you're in a city, maybe you can find out, is there a city farm that you can be part of? Or are there volunteer schemes? Is there a wildlife scheme? Around us, we have the Avon Wildlife Trust, and they are always looking for volunteers to clean canals or reclaim an area, make a place fruitful and beautiful. So that there are lots of ways that people can get involved with nature if you feel motivated to do so.
Well, I'm just smiling because I'm thinking about my dad. My dad grew up on a farm, and I think if he'd have had his way, that's what he would have done for all of his life. But he always had an allotment, and runner beans. I can't really eat runner beans anymore because I've eaten so much of it in my life. But tomatoes and his flowers, the garden my mum and my dad had was just beautiful. And he's 82 now. And I think the fact that he still gets outside, he's in an assisted living flat, and they've got a veranda, and he gets outside and he goes and eats his lunch out there, and he reads his newspaper. And I think he's started a bit of a trend now, because some of the other people have bought chairs and they're all sort of like congregating outside with him. But I think it's a main reason why my dad has lived so long, because he's outside in nature. And what he did when he couldn't have a garden anymore is he put bird feeders on the railings of his flat, and he has the doors open. He's got sparrows, robins, all sorts of birds are spending time within in his space. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I even saw a study saying that mental health is more positively affected by a very varied system. So if you're looking at a garden with lots of different plants or a forest with lots of different trees, than when people are looking at monoculture. So we're hardwired to see the complexity of nature. So that really lifts us. And with a garden as well, we've talked about the question of the seasons, but I've also realized that with some elements of the plants, it's like cooking, which is that there's a moment when your peas or your beans are à point, and perfect, and then there's a moment when they go over and start turning woody. Whereas other vegetables like onions and leeks and roots, beetroots and turnips and all those things, they don't mind when you pick them. they hang out there, and you can be a bit more flexible with them, But of course, there's people have gone further with this. There's a guy called Richard Louv who's written a book called The Last Child in the Woods. And he talks about nature deficit disorder. So he's actually putting a name on the kind of spiritual malaise that happens if we disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really helped me to care for something, particularly as the kids have grown up and left home. I still have that desire to look after something, to care for something. So I have my little dog, and we've got plants here, and it's what is that desire to sort of really just look after it. I mean, that as my connection has grown, I want to do that more. I'm finding it very difficult I used to squash spiders. I used to be like, kill flies, electrocute flies. I can't bear the thought of that now. All life is sacred, Rosie, isn't it? It's incredible.
It is. And of course, there's a big rub, when you have foxes that come and eat your hens, or rats that are eating your hen food or whatever. It is a heck of an edge. And there's a beautiful film, and I'm going to get the name wrong. It's either called The Little Big Farm or The Big Little Farm.
I know it, yeah.
Yes, but it's some combination of those words, and it's about a family who really, really take on the going into the country and going wild and going organic, and taking their time to see how nature rebalances itself, if you allow her to work with you. So yeah, but you talked about the impact of traveling and
Yeah.
perhaps losing connection with your base.
Yes, I mean, if I'd have done the picture of health tool that's in Health Creation 18 months ago, I would have scored very highly in environment because we had a beautiful garden. I spent lots of time out there. We lived in Derbyshire, so as close to the countryside. I recycled, I composted, and I think I took it for granted. I did it because I thought I need to do that. I need to help the environment. But it was only when I lost it, when we started traveling, that I realized the impact on my energy levels. So I have stayed in Airbnbs in quite a few places in the UK now and in Spain. And there have been some places that when I chose them, I didn't look at the environment at all. I just looked at where it was in the country. So I've stayed in a house over in Shrewsbury that literally was like a tomb, Rosie. It was cold. There was no warmth. There were a lot of spiders because actually it was a good environment for spiders. But we went into quite a dark place, Michael and our energies were really low.
Mm.
And it brought us to some edges in our relationship. And it was so obvious to me how the environment wasn't helping
Yeah,
how I was feeling. It affected my emotions. It affected my energy levels. I was ill while I was there. And then, comparing that to the Highlands of Scotland, where now we're building a house, where I was doing HIIT exercises. I went to a HIIT class, had never been to one before, but I'm doing squats and I'm walking up hills and why is that? Well, definitely the air quality up there is so much better. There's so much more oxygen. But of course, I was out in nature all the time.
yes. Well, exactly right. And we can go deeper into this and talk about land energy and the question of ley lines and earth energies. And these are real things. This is not woo-woo, because what happens where there are underground structures, and where there are tectonic plates, and where there are the equivalent of sort of rock cliffs underneath the ground, these create electrical pathways. So the currents that generate in the earth can actually create this flow of energy. And that there are books about the fact that there have been mapped to be clusters of illness around certain ley lines and earth energies. So another thing about all of this is, and I've had clients who said to me when I've said, do you know anything about this illness? Do you know when you got ill, how you got ill? And there'll be sometimes an aha moment where people will say, do you know what? I have never felt well since I moved into a particular house, just like you're saying to me now.
Yeah.
So, it is really important to listen to that part of ourselves. Conversely, there are people who know where their sacred places are, where the places are that just give them that amazing sense of peace or uplift. For me, one of those places is St. David's on the west coast of Wales, right down in the southern tip. There's the most beautiful bay, St. David's Bay, and on the northern tip of it, St. David's, the old capital of Wales, which has within it a cathedral, an old cathedral. And honestly, it has for me, the sweetest soul energy there. Now, what am I picking up on? Is it the land energy? Is it the amount of worship that's gone on that piece of land? It's hard to say, because that's supposed to be where Columbus came across through, and there was a lot of pilgrimage through that area. And there's a sort of line through South Wales, through the different monasteries and places, where the pilgrims came, Lantony Priory and through to Ross-on-Wye and so forth, these beautiful places where people could feel this elevated land energy.
Well, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of at least 3 people that I met at Broughton Hall estate in Yorkshire, who we could ask to be guests on the podcast and explain that more to us. I went to their Science and Consciousness conference in November last year, and blew me away at the physicists and mathematicians who were describing sacred geometry and about ley lines and energy in certain places and how you can clear that energy. I mean, that's a whole 3 podcast episodes there, Rosie.
But, while we're talking about consciousness and nature, here it starts to get really fascinating, because most people will have heard of Peter and Eileen Caddy, who set up Findhorn, and have seen, if you Google them and look at their supersized vegetables, they communed with the soil and with the seeds. They blessed the seeds into the land. They gave healing energy to and love to their vegetables, and grew these enormous vegetables. And in Japan, when I went to visit the Japanese Jorei Society, they talked about us having the right relationship with spirit, the right relationship with beauty, and the right relationship with nature. So I said, so you mean organic? No. So you mean biodynamic? No. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, loving the land, healing the land, sitting, and apparently they sit around their fields en masse and pour love into the field. And even though they don't do crop rotation, they get crops, which are 5 times bigger than national average.
Well, I've been to Findhorn probably 4 times, I think, and I've eaten the food that they grow there. And it's a wonderful experience, because the community get together and everybody takes turns in washing up and, cooking the food and helping to prepare the food. It absolutely tastes better. That is not a figment of my imagination.
No.
The food up there is absolutely delicious.
And, the other thing is how much food goes to waste. When I drive around in the autumn, you see apple trees, pear trees, plum trees groaning with fruit that nobody's picking. A very sweet friend of mine called Jenny, who lives down in Cornwall, what she does is a community project called Gleaning. Well, I didn't know what gleaning is, but when the farmers sell their quota to the supermarkets, once they've got the quota, there's often quite a lot left around the sides of the fields. So Jenny and her mates go in and they go and pick all the crops that are still there and take them to the homeless, to the food banks.
Wow, I'm just wondering, it must be near lunchtime, because we've diversed again back to food. We'll always find our way back there, won't we? But just as I was listening to you then, what did pop into my mind is that I read that David Attenborough is coming up to being 99. And I thought, oh my goodness, somebody who's spent his life connected to nature, and had such an amazing relationship with it. And he's just about to turn 99. I know you're a big fan, aren't you, Rosie?
I am, and I think he should be beatified. I think he should be Saint David Attenborough. He is so gloriously, beautifully attuned and has such a fantastically caring, loving relationship with nature. I know the series he's just launching now, called Ocean, he's saying it's his most important message yet, and it's not too late, but it's critical, that our oceans, and there was, of course, the series Seaspiracy. Lots of people I know have stopped eating fish altogether since listening to Seaspiracy. So this abuse of nature. Oh, and while we're on the subject, mention the amazing Polly Higgins, who very, very tragically passed very young. But she started off this whole movement to create ecocide, as of in the killing of nature, the willful killing of nature as the fourth crime against peace, and getting this on the Rome statutes. And when she started, it seemed like a jolly long shot to think she would achieve it. But her group, and I think the leader is Joe Mehta, who took over from her, they've achieved it. They have made it illegal to willfully damage nature, and not only the companies, but the chief executive being culpable. So I haven't followed it closely enough to see if there are actual prosecutions going on, but it feels as if we should be gearing up within the health movement to do something similar. If companies are willfully putting food, there we go again, and chemicals into our systems, which are toxic, that should also be a crime. That should be a crime against humanity.
I know it definitely feels it when you have got that connection to nature yourself. So I'm very passionate about people doing their inner work instead of being shut down and closed to what is around us, which very often happens when people have suffered trauma, loss. Their heart becomes closed so that they don't feel the pain of that experience. But in helping people reconnect with that and move through that pain and release that emotion, what comes afterwards is the reconnection to nature. And the more we do that, it feels like a crime.
Yeah.
It feels like a crime ourselves. Our own integrity doesn't allow us then to hurt our environment.
Exactly. And we are outing abuse, whether it's sexual abuse, slavery, and. But if anybody's starting to feel eco-despair, couple of pointers. There's a fantastic book called Active Hope, which is my colleague Chris Johnston, and I think it's Joanna Lacey? Excuse me if I got that wrong. Active Hope. It's how to survive the mess we're in without going crazy, is the subtitle. But also there's a film on YouTube from Paul Hawken called Blessed Unrest. It was him launching a conference on the book of that name. He was bringing to our attention. And while he was speaking, he had a PowerPoint playing, rolling a whole list of thousands and thousands and thousands of names. And he said, there is a movement on earth which is larger than any movement there's ever been, which is not religious, which is not run by a heterosexual male. It's not political. But if I ran this PowerPoint from now on Friday till the end of the conference on Monday, we would not have got to the bottom of the list of organizations who are working for environmental protection, social justice, and human health. So, we are awake to what's happening. And, the main message is that every single one of us can start living in the Tao, in right relationship to nature. So that's what we're all about.
Well, I have got a job on my hands to check the show notes for this episode, because the amount of resources that you have listed in the last 35 minutes, wow. And that just is the tip of the iceberg, really. We're just scratching the surface here. I know we will do many, many episodes on this subject, Rosie. And thank you so much for sharing all of that and more with us. We're going to do 2 more episodes on nature. Next week, we have the wonderful Claire Hattersley, who was the Willeda biodynamic gardener for many, many years. And she's going to talk to us about how you can start on this journey of reconnecting with nature through this beautiful story that she describes how her relationship with that garden. And then we have another guest the week after Rosy. You know, we are looking forward to this deep, deep dive of people who live in this connection. It's joyful, isn't it? It's really joyful.
So that third guest will be Helen Patterson, who has really lived the relationship with nature as a teacher, running a forest school, and also as a mentor, and in bringing this into education that she's doing now with children with special needs. So it's going to be fascinating to hear her personal experience of the importance of nature in health and healing.
Yeah, I can't wait. Well, as I've said in most of the episodes, we could carry on talking for another couple of hours. Thank you very much, Rosy, for sharing. And I think more than anything, putting in the amount of work you do to join those dots, to be able to explain it to us in terms that even I can understand. Thank you so much.
Oh, my great pleasure. And you know, we'll go deeper into this topic because we haven't even touched into the illnesses that arise from the environment. So more to come.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and shown you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosy. I mean, we have to remember transformation begins with love, and that's self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, and we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community, check out our trainings and our services and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like to see us interview, the questions you want to ask, and get answered through the contact page on our website, aliveandlovingit.org.
I can't wait to read them. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be, always. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.